Hello and welcome to a new edition of the Net Report. Today we have a pretty big show. It is day one of the legal tampering period in the NFL, and quite a lot happened today. We're going to kind of start, I would say, the most consequential move that happened today. 1 year, $8 million for Jacoby Brissett, the New England Patriots. What a crazy move this was. And to more important news,
We're gonna let him go on with this. We just let this slide.
The Atlanta Falcons gave a massive 4-year deal to Kirk Cousins to pry him away from the Minnesota Vikings. $180 million total. Atlanta's kind of a threat now, boys. What do we think?
I don't know if I'd go as far as to say they're a threat, but they look a lot better. They do look a lot better. That defense is still going to be.
We're immediately moving on from Chris because he disagrees that he's a threat. Tarique, why is Atlanta a threat? Go.
They're not hot.
Okay, anyways. Atlanta is going to win the NFC South.
I mean, that
it's not even close.
That doesn't make them a threat, though. Look, okay, when I think threat,
they're
I'm
a
thinking
threat
contender.
to win the NFC South.
I mean, anybody was a threat to win the NFC South last year, let's be honest. But Kirk Cousins to the Falcons is still a huge deal. I mean, this has been a team devoid of talent at that position since Matt Ryan left, and they don't have to deal with Arthur Smith anymore. So, in that sense, this offense looks like it's going to be great. Kirk Cousins throwing to Drake London, Kyle Pitts. You got Bijan Robinson in that backfield. I really like what they're building there, and now you have a quarterback who's actually going to throw to your tight end. Like, all the Kyle Pitts stock has kind of been thrown out the window over the past 2 years. Buy all that stock right back again. We've seen Kirk Cousins play with star running backs like Dalvin Cook. He's going to make him better in the pass game. It's a great move in that sense, especially just this offense in general is going to be so much better under him.
100% agree. And now that they have a quarterback, they no longer have to use the number 8 overall pick on a quarterback. They can either take a high-end receiver like Malik Neighbors or go after a possibly star edge rusher like Dallas Turner. And that just kind of helps them fill out that roster a little bit more. New coach, new quarterback. I mean, I love what they're building in Atlanta. It's just fun. This is a massive, massive swing. And on the flip side, this spells low-key disaster for the Vikings. I don't know what they thought was going to happen, but I just don't know how they went into this offseason not prepared to pay Kirk Cousins.
I don't know how they went in without being prepared to pay for Kirk Cousins, knowing that their star receiver wanted Kirk back. If you know what I mean.
It's going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how you lose Hawkinson, now you're losing Kirk Cousins. There's teams really devoid of talent now. I don't know where they go forward from this. Maybe they trade up for a QB, but even still, like, do they necessarily have the tools to do all that? I don't really think so, but we'll just have to wait and see, I guess.
Yeah, and staying on the track of quarterbacks that were recently signed in the past 24 hours, Russell Wilson, after he got released by the Denver Broncos, signed a 1-year, essentially $1 million minimum deal to join the Pittsburgh Steelers, where he will be, air quotes, competing for a starting quarterback job with Kenny Pickett. And by competing, I mean he's the starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers until anything else changes. I will be on record saying that I am very low on Russell Wilson and have been for many, 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 many years. But I think that this does make them a better team than they were with Kenny Pickett, because at least with Russell Wilson, you have someone who can competently run an offense. I just don't think he could elevate them to anything super substantial.
I like it in the sense that I do think Russell Wilson is a slight upgrade from Kenny Pickett. It's a buy low, maybe like low risk, high reward type of deal. I don't think they're going to win anything with this, but there's a competent offense there. You got Deontay Johnson, maybe George Pickens, depending on what happens. I mean, there's good targets there. I do think it's better than Denver. So I expect to see maybe, I don't want to say a renaissance from Russell Wilson, just because we know what we've seen from him over the last few years. But one, it's going to give Kenny Pickett competition. And let's be honest, I don't think Kenny Pickett's the answer. So I really wouldn't be surprised, like you said, if he is starting. I think it makes them marginally better, but nothing insane.
Yeah, in all honesty, I really think, I don't know what their huge ordeal was this with Russ. I know if they think Kenny Pickett isn't the answer. I don't think Russ was really the biggest replacement for an answer, but I kind of want to see what they're going to do with Russ. Are they just going to throw Kenny Pickett to the side? Or are they going to try to do what the Jets wanted to do with Aaron Rodgers and Zach Wilson, or see what happens?
The other big problem with this is that there's a man called Arthur Smith running their offense now, and
I forgot about
that
that.
just does not make me very excited for this offense. But it's a clear upgrade, and to be honest, if you're just going to give $1 million for Kurt to give it to Russell Wilson, I mean, that's at least a good investment. He's going to sell tickets and jerseys, so they could do a lot worse. I think he's a better option than Kenny Pickett. So we move on. Staying in the quarterback room, Garner Minshew leaves the Indianapolis Colts to head over to the Vegas Raiders. 2 years, $25 million, where he will be air quotes competing for a starting quarterback position with Aiden O'Connell. If he's not the starting quarterback and they just gave him $25 million, we need to take a long look at the Raiders in the sense that he's going to be their starting quarterback. This is slightly underwhelming, but he's shown the ability to run an offense with a good coordinator, so I guess.
This just screams placeholder quarterback. I mean, maybe they suck for a year with Gardner Minshew. They go into next year's draft a QB. That's honestly what it looks like here. Maybe they trade up for someone, have him mentor him for a year, but it's just placeholder QB. Deals like this happen all the time. We saw it a couple years ago with Atlanta, Marcus Mariota, same type of ordeal.
I don't hate this move. I think you're right, Chris. It's very. I still think they should draft a quarterback. I just don't think there's going to be a good enough one available at 13 to justify taking one. So you might as well at least sign a quarterback and hopefully get one in the second or third round. Gardner Minshew's just whatever. They're not going to win more than 8 or 9 games, if that. But hopefully their defense can elevate them enough to kind of at least look competent. I hope that for Antonio Pierce and this team, because I like the guys on this team. Quarterback play is just so crucial. I don't Garner Minshew's not going to lead them to more than 9 wins realistically.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna very quickly go over some just minor transactions that happened over the past 24 hours as well. T. Higgins requested a trade. Aaron Jones got released by the Green Bay Packers, and Joe Mixon also got released by the Cincinnati Bengals. All of those are relevant because of what followed. With Joe Mixon, they signed Zach Moss. The Bengals did. Aaron Jones got released because the Packers signed Josh Jacobs to a long-term deal, which we'll get into in a second. And T. Higgins, after he got franchise tagged by the Bengals, requested a trade. Any specific or particular thoughts you have on any of those 3 topics before we move on, guys?
Packers had the best running back room for an hour. For an hour. And then Aaron Jones couldn't agree with a deal, so then they got rid of him.
Yeah.
I feel like Josh Jacobs is a great replacement, though, if they were planning on getting rid of Aaron Jones.
Yeah, as far as Bengals go, I mean, it's definitely, I mean, losing Joe Mixon for Zach Moss definitely a downgrade in a sense, but Zach Moss did incredible with the Colts last year, so I think he'll still be a fine plug-and-play running back. If I'm the Bengals, I'm doing everything in my power to try not to trade T. Higgins, because that duo between him and Chase have been incredible. You got to stick it out with them, and that you've had the most sustained success with those guys over the past couple years. Got to keep it going.
Fair enough, but if you're not going to pay him, and you can possibly get a second or a high-end third-round pick, I mean, it doesn't seem like they're going to pay him. Like, it doesn't seem like it's in the cards. And Tyler Boyd's also a free agent, so it's like, what do you kind of do with that receiver room? I just don't think they're going to have a choice. With what Tarique said, as Josh Jacobs kind of being a good replacement for Aaron Jones, I agree in the fact that they do a lot of similar things, and they provide kind of similar things to the offense for the Packers. I just don't know that Jacobs is an upgrade over someone who's kind of tried and tested in that system for the Packers. Even when he was kind of hobbled and beat up last year, he still put together a 1,000-yard season and was consistently one of their best option in the backfield as far as receiving. So I don't know. It's a big commitment we'll get into in a little bit for Jacobs, but we'll see. A couple trades that went down. The massive one that we're going to start off with, and Tarique's going to be all over this one. The Panthers traded Brian Burns to the New York Giants for a 2nd and a 5th round pick, and the Giants proceeded to give Brian Burns a 5-year extension worth a maximum $150 million. Tarique, you're the resident Giants fan. How are we feeling about this, pairing him up with Kayvon Thibodeau and Dexter Lawrence on that edge?
I look at this trade and I really do, because now we have really good top tier defensive line. We just need another interior lineman to match up with Dexter Lawrence. And I feel like Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns on both sides is going to be a dangerous thing for tackles to go against because you have, no matter what, you have two speedy guys that are ready to push forward the ball, as we saw with Kayvon Thibodeau last year. Was a major upgrade from his rookie year. And if they're both going to be pushing forward, especially Brian Burns getting this $150 million contract, I feel like the Giants' run stop game could be something to be scared of if they get it together correctly.
Yeah, I mean, over with that trade overnight, they become one of, if not the best D line. I mean, we'll get into other moves the Giants have made, but I mean, this is the one positive we've seen. They've always had a good defensive line, especially in run defense. I like it a lot in the sense you're adding more pressure to the QB, and honestly, that's always one of the better ways to build your team up, especially when you're struggling in all other facets. So I like the move for the Giants, especially because I mean, if you're going to use your money somewhere, using it to pay an edge is not a bad move, especially when you're in a transitionary period.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Use our money somewhere else.
We'll get to that in a little bit, Tarique. Don't worry. I know you got lots of thoughts. But the other kind of elephant in the room as far as Brian Burns, guys, is Panthers got a 2nd and 5th round pick for him. Okay. That's the exact return that the Giants got when they traded away Leonard Williams. So relocating your assets, not terrible in that sense. Obviously, you got to pay the guy for those assets, but Panthers, it was majorly reported last year that there was an offer for 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick from the Rams at the trade deadline the previous season, and they declined the offer. And now the Panthers are giving Brian Burns away for a 2nd and a 5th. I mean,
they've mismanaged this whole Brian Burns situation. We've kind of seen it coming for the last couple years.
Oh yeah,
and now you're stuck trading him. I don't want to say for pennies on the dollar because I mean a second is something, but it was bound to happen. It's unfortunate, but there were the contract negotiation stuff they had a couple years ago with him, and now it's just this is what it's led to.
I mean, the second was always on the table, apparently. Now they just missed out on 2 first-round picks.
Mm-hmm.
The Panthers are
I'm okay with it.
Such a terribly run organization. 2 other trades that happened just yesterday. My least favorite quarterback for the Patriots in quite some time, Mac Jones, got traded to the Jaguars for a 6th-round pick. Good riddance. Hopefully you find success there as a backup. And Carlton Davis, in kind of a surprise move today, got traded from the Bucs to the Lions for a 3rd-round pick, and I believe the Lions also allocated a 5th and a 6th. I mean, this is pretty good get here for the Lions, if you ask me, and I kind of am left wondering why the Bucs did this. I mean, I know Carlton Davis is the last year of his rookie deal, I want to say, but kind of odd that they invested money in other departments on their offense and then traded away.
It's a little puzzling in that sense. Carlton Davis has been good for a few years, but the Bucs are kind of that weird team in the middle. And I mean, if they weren't going to pay him next year, get something for him now, I guess that's probably the thought process when it comes to that. So, I mean, I agree with it in that sense, but we'll just have to wait and see. They're another weird team kind of stuck in the middle in a, I don't want to say transitionary period because they re-signed Baker, which we'll talk about probably later, but I don't know, man. It is a little puzzling.
Yeah, weird. Couple re-signings that happened over the past day or two, like Chris just alluded to. Baker just re-signed for a 3-year deal with the Bucs, which I think maxes out of the 150 million, if my math is, or if my memory serves me correct. And then Mike Evans also re-signed for a 2 or 3-year deal with the Bucs as well. Just there's some other re-signings, but just getting into those really quick. What are your guys' thoughts on the Bucs re-signing both Baker and Mike Evans?
No, honestly, I feel like re-signing these two are a great thing for the Bucs organization. Like, all fans fell in love with both of these guys. Well, of course, all Bucs fans love Mike Evans. And the way Baker played last year, I feel like he deserves finally getting a deal. And seeing him come out, and you saw last year that Baker found a new love for the game in Tampa, and he was showing it on the field and was able to a few tough wins. So I feel like, in all honesty, this was a great move for the Bucs to bring back both of these guys.
Yeah, and kind of like I alluded to earlier, they're a little bit stuck in the middle, but this proves, hey, we're trying to compete now. We're not trying to, tear everything down, which it really looked like a year ago, even when they signed Baker, because many people didn't think he'd really have the success he did end up having. I like it. Compete. See what you got in him. Do I think he's going to lead you to, a deep playoff run? No, not necessarily, but It's fun to see them compete. Maybe an opportunity opens up. You can either trade up for a QB like a couple years from now, maybe once the Baker saga's gone through its course, but just stay competitive, man. A lot of teams in the NFL don't stay competitive and like to tear it down. It's not a bad thing as long as you're not the Steelers who are going 9-8 every year for 5, 6, 7 years. So I like it in that sense.
At least they're winning.
No, yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that you hit the nail right on the head, Chris. A lot of teams don't want to just kind of win. They're like, okay, well, if we're not Super Bowl contenders, let's just blow it all up and sell off our assets. And sometimes I think there's some pride in just going 10-7 a couple of seasons. I mean, like the Bucks had a out of nowhere really good season for a lot of people wrote this team off last year. And it is good to see Baker kind of refine that love for the game, like Tarique alluded to. Like after everything that went down with the Browns, he comes in and kind of out of nowhere leads the Rams onto that huge comeback win 2 years ago, gets rewarded by a prove it deal by the Bucks last year, and then exceeds highly, like then gets paid this 3 year massive extension. Like good on Baker. Like just good on Baker. I'm really happy for him. Mike Evans staying there, obviously, it's a win-win for both those guys. A couple other extensions. Leonard Williams re-signed with the Seattle Seahawks, 3 years, $65 million. They traded for him obviously last trade deadline, and that's a huge get for them to stay on as the leader on that defensive line. And then Michael Wenwu re-signed with the New England Patriots to kind of headline and bolster their offensive line, 3 years, $57 million. Do either of you have particular thoughts on either of these re-signs before we move on?
I miss Leonard Williams.
Yeah.
Excellent analysis.
No, I mean, these are both great re-signings. You had to pay a little bit of top dollar for both these guys, but these are not the flashy names that you're gonna, typically see at the top of headlines, but they're important for your teams. I mean, we saw Leonard Williams in New York over the last few years, one of the better but quieter interior linemen. Michael Wenwu, one of the better guards in the league, so definitely gotta get them locked up.
Agreed. Moving into our next area of signings that happened today, day one of the legal tampering period. Tony Pollard kind of started our day off with DeAndre Swift both signing to new teams. DeAndre Swift ended up going to the Chicago Bears for kind of a higher than average people might have expected, 3 years, $24 million. Tony Pollard ended up leaving the Dallas Cowboys to go to the Tennessee Titans again for 3 years, $24 million. Boys, do we have thoughts on this average value of $8 million for either of these running backs?
The Tony Pollard one definitely surprised me quite a bit. I thought he could have gotten a little bit more than $8 million. You saw them you saw like all the rumors of like franchise tags or whatnot. I thought he would get a decent payday. DeAndre Swift got about what I expected. I just didn't expect him to go to the Bears. I expected him to remain in Philly, but as we saw, Philly was aiming a little bit higher, and honestly, I like both moves for them. I thought the Titans one was a little bit weird in the sense that you had Tajay Spears kind of ready to go. Now you're going to have a committee of Pollard and Spears, but I think it can still work out there. They're going to move on from Derrick Henry. And DeAndre Swift, just another, I don't want to say buy low guy because they paid for him, but like we saw with TJ Edwards last year, they signed him from the Eagles. He ended up playing really good for them. I think we can see that similarly with DeAndre Swift this year.
Yeah, these two running backs I wasn't really expecting to get big deals. Both of them getting the same deal was kind of odd to me, but I don't know. I feel like both in their designated area could try to prove something. I just don't know how far they're really gonna go. Like we already know DeAndre Swift has really proved himself. Pollard had like the 1, maybe 2 years, but hasn't really done much to show me that he could lead these Titans to a bunch of wins.
I mean, I'm going to throw my 2 cents in there. I think 3-year deal for DeAndre Swift is a little old in the sense that he's shown he's kind of injury prone. That's kind of why he's no longer on the Detroit Lions. I don't know if I would have given him a 3-year deal. The fact that both him and Pollard got the same $8 million average value is kind of a little shocking, just because I think Pollard is the better back. Not to say either of them aren't explosive. It's just interesting. We are going to move into our next injury-prone back. Austin Eckler ended up leaving the Chargers, ended up going to the Washington Commanders. in a surprisingly low deal, 2 years, 12 million. I kind of was thrown for a loop on this one, guys. What do we think?
Yeah, if you had told me before the season that Austin Eckler would get paid significantly less than Tony Pollard, DeAndre Swift, and just the whole rest of the running back market, I would have called you a liar. And it really, unfortunately for him, was that second half of the season that absolutely tanked his value. And seeing him go to Washington just, I don't know. I mean, it feels a little disappointing in the sense we always wanted to see him go to a contender or remain with the Chargers. That was never really going to come to fruition because they weren't going to pay him. But wow, it's been downhill from him over the last year or so. So this one kind of surprised me, but not in the sense that he didn't get paid a lot. I just never really had the Commanders on my radar for him.
Yeah, I wasn't really expecting Austin Eckler to go to the Commanders. It's just very odd for him to end up there, but it kind of shows like this is towards the end of his career. He's just going to start falling team to team. I don't really want to say that, but at the same time, that last half of the year, like Chris said, really tanked his stock.
Now, I will say this too. I do like him in the sense of being a complimentary, receiving back towards Brian Robinson. So, don't get me wrong. This move has value for the Commanders. I'm not saying they're just doing it for, the sake of doing it. So, I like it in that sense. I just never really saw it. I didn't see this move coming.
Yeah, no, this isn't like a clout-seeking signing or anything by the Commanders. This is a very good value. I mean, Austin Eckler has high upside, and yeah, if you're only going to sign him for a complimentary back with a running back room of Chris Rodriguez and Brian Robinson, I mean, yeah, throw Austin Eckler in there for 2 years, 12 million. I mean, that's excellent. It's just, you're right. Like Tarique was saying, it kind of feels like we're kind of at the end clothesline of his career. Like running backs, man, they're just so fragile. Like it just seemed like 2 years ago, like this dude was like going to get a huge payday, and he kind of had an up and down injury season and never really had success at the line of scrimmage. And here we are. It's just kind of sad.
It is. It's quite sad and bizarre, but that's the life of a running back.
And as we alluded to earlier, Josh Jacobs surprisingly got the biggest running back deal of the day, because running backs were flying off the board there for a second. 4 years, $48 million commitment from the Green Bay Packers to go to Josh Jacobs. This is a similar ish deal to what the Packers gave Aaron Jones in 2021. They gave him a 4-year, $45 million extension. So they clearly value him in the same sense. Josh Jacobs obviously leaves as the star running back out of the Vegas Raiders to come to Green Bay now to kind of frontline that running back room. It's just kind of him now because I believe A.J. Dillon is also a free agent. But what are your guys' thoughts on a 4-year commitment, almost $50 million to Josh Jacobs and the Green Bay Packers?
Josh Jacobs to the Green Bay Packers. I definitely think he's a better 1 and 2 down back for Green Bay. Aaron Jones has kind of got up there in age over the last few years, so I understand wanting to bring him in. Like I said, I'm never a huge proponent on paying running backs this type of money, but you had Jordan Love kind of explode on the scene last year. They're a nice, fun, young team. Definitely adds another weapon to make Jordan Love's life easier. We'll just have to wait and see with this one. I'm not as high on this one as another move they made, but it has its place. I don't hate it. I don't love it, but I don't hate it either. And I think Josh Jacobs will fit very well on that offense.
No, I feel like this is honestly a good move for Josh Jacobs in the sense of he's getting a team that's rebuilding very young.
Fair enough. It wasn't the biggest deal of the day, but maybe the most consequential of the day. Saquon Barkley exited the state of New York and traveled down to Philadelphia to sign with the Eagles. 3 years, $37.5 million, possibility of being 3 years, $45 million with incentives. I will quickly, off the top of my head, tell you that I love the fit of Saquon to the Eagles. I don't love the dollar amount going for Saquon Barkley just because of the injury history. But, I mean, Saquon's never, ever played behind as good of an offensive line, and we've seen what both DeAndre Swift and Miles Sanders can do behind a good offensive line with the Eagles and their offensive scheme. So I am very excited to see what Saquon can do in this system. Chris, our resident Eagles fan. How are we feeling?
So, looking just at the numbers, it's a tough pill to swallow. It is a lot of money for Saquon, especially as you mentioned before. Miles Sanders, DeAndre Swift, they've had success in this running game. But Saquon goes from a team that was 30th and 31st in, I think, rush win percentage to the Eagles, which I believe were second and third. That is absolutely huge for his career. If Saquon was able to have success on the Giants, there's no telling what he can do in the Eagles system. So it's exciting in that sense. I also see it kind of similarly to when the 49ers added Christian McCaffrey. Everyone was kind of like, well, that's a lot of money. I mean, yeah, they did trade for him. It's not the same as outright signing him, but it'll add a new dimension to their offense. They'll be fun to watch. That, like I said, that money is tough to swallow, but at the end of the day, if he stays healthy, and that's the big if, this can be a really fun signing and put this Eagles offense over the top. We'll just have to wait and see. Hope he stays healthy, and it's going to determine a lot on that.
Drew, how many tears have you shed today?
Dude, honestly, I just hope our first game against him, Dexter Lawrence goes in and hits him like in the movie Longest Yard, where the guy made the guard hit himself. That's all I hope.
That's the weird. Okay, nice.
Okay,
That's all I have to
I've
say.
got nothing for that. Thank you for that keen insight, Tarique. You're gonna love this one even more. Then Xavier McKinney.
Stop talking. Stop.
who
No,
also-
I'm not done. I'm not done. Joe Schoen, what are you doing? You didn't use our franchise tag, and you let two of our top people go on both sides of the ball. Saquon Barkley was the cornerstone of this damn team for 6 years. 6! You know how many little kids have Saquon jerseys? Because that's the only running back they knew? And you let them all down. All right? And then you let Xavier McKinney walk. You let that man walk. You knew he was a top safety. What do we got there? Huh? We have no one to replace him. We can't even look forward to the damn draft because your ass is looking at people like Caleb Williams that we're not going to get. That's my 2 cents.
I love it. I love the emotion, and I feel for you.
So you're gonna like me a lot less than when we talk about Xavier McKinney to the Green Bay Packers, aren't you?
You already heard my spiel. Continue. I let it out.
So a massive 4-year, $68 million deal is what the Packers gave Xavier McKinney after they kind of let Darnell Savage walk. They give McKinney, who's one of the better safeties on the free agent market, and they give him this massive deal to kind of headline that backfield with Jair Alexander. We know how Tarique feels. Big Chris, how are we feeling about this one for the Packers?
I'm looking at that average annual value. It looks huge, but when you factor in they're basically offloading that first $25 billion in the first year, it makes it feel like a lot better of a deal. He's been Pro Football Focus's number one safety over the past, at least last year. I don't know what he was the last couple years, but there's definitely value there. Usually safeties don't get huge contracts like this, but Xavier McKinney to the Packers, man, that shores up the back end of that defense quite a bit. I love the move, at least just from a signing and fit standpoint. Packers going in on some of these free agents, I love it. They just got to keep it going. Keep building up this team around Jordan Love because the sky's only up from here.
Yeah, it's kind of funny in the sense that, like, the Patriots and Packers took very different approaches. The Packers lost their longtime quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, and I mean, maybe they always knew they had something with Jordan Love, but they've kind of still been pretty aggressive in spending and building up this team, whereas the Patriots kind of did the opposite in the sense that they kind of really never put the focus on certain positions, and it's just kind of fun to see what this Packers team is becoming now. Jordan Love clearly showed excellent signs of progression last season, and now you go out and get one of the more premier safeties on the free agent market. We'll see what else they do kind of along the edges. But they spent big money both on Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney. They're going to be exciting. I mean, they might not win their division because they have a very tough division with the Lions, but it's going to be fun. We move on to some other kind of just skill players and quarterbacks and running backs, well, I'll say. Leonard Floyd ends up signing a 2-year, $20 million deal with the 49ers. Kind of helps them bolster that defensive front with some veteran presence. I presume this probably takes them out of the mix for re-signing Chase Young, but I don't think that was really kind of ever in the cards. We'll see, though. Then Robert Hunt signed a massive, and I'm going to put an exclamation point on massive, 5-year, $100 million deal with the Carolina Panthers to kind of frontline that offensive line to help protect Bryce Young. Bryce Huff left the New York Jets to head over to Philly as well. The Eagles stole 2 people from New York today. That's kind of funny. Signed a 3-year, $51 million deal. Chris, any kind of real thoughts on your Eagles and Bryce Huff here?
So for Bryce Huff, I like like once again, I feel like I said the same thing for Saquon. I like the addition of the player. I like the fit. The number is pretty high. I think it's becoming more and more obvious they're going to trade one of either Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat. So this move is kind of just gearing up for that. There's a small possibility they're all on the team come day one of the regular season, but I just don't see it. I mean, he's a guy he's your typical third down pass rusher. I mean, he had 11 sacks, I believe, last season. He's not the greatest run defender, which I feel like this team could use more of, so I don't really love it in that sense, but you know how Howie Roseman is. He loves to build in the trenches. He loves to build his D-line. He likes to have versatile guys who can either rush the passer, stuff the run. So, I mean, he's got a nice combination there. He's got his speedy edge guys in Huff and Reddick if they do end up keeping Reddick. Same with Sweat as well. You have your guys, run stuffers, and Brandon Graham, Jordan Davis. So, I mean, it's typical Eagles GMing. They're going to continue to build in the trenches and spend the money on that D-line.
Fair enough, fair enough. Thank you for that expert insight on your Eagles. Gabe Davis ends up leaving the Buffalo Bills to head over to the Jacksonville Jaguars in a 3-year, $39 million deal. A little bit more than maybe I would have given Gabe Davis, and I kind of almost wonder if this puts them out of the contention to re-sign Calvin Ridley. Either of you have particular thoughts on that?
I will say this: we're not gonna know until we see what the deal for Calvin Ridley ends up looking like. But if at the end of the day, if the Jags only end up signing Gabe Davis for 3 years, $39 million, and let's say Calvin Ridley gets a somewhat comparable contract, he'll definitely get more. But if he gets a somewhat comparable contract, I'd love it a lot less. We've seen Gabe Davis and the Bills with one of the best deep throwers, dare I say, ever with Josh Allen. Still would have some games where he had 5 receptions for 95 yards and a touchdown. Great deep threat. Then he'd have somewhere he'd have 0 receptions for 0 yards. So very boomer bust guy. That's your typical deep threat. So we're just going to have to wait to see. It's going to be a question mark until we see what the Jags do for the rest of the offseason, especially at that receiver position.
Fair enough. I'm holding out hope that the Patriots can maybe get a deal done with Calvin Ridley, but we'll see. Maybe he'll take a 5-year deal worth $5. Who knows?
I could see
Anyways, I could too. Thank you for the optimism. I don't think I'm getting any optimism from Tarique tonight, but who knows?
Leave me alone.
Jonathan Grenard ends up leaving the Houston Texans, heading over to the Minnesota Vikings. They ended up giving him 4 years, $76 million. Kind of a weird deal in the sense that the Vikings also have Danielle Hunter kind of on the free agent market, and they also didn't re-sign Kirk Cousins, as we alluded to, or not even alluded to, we straight up said earlier. I like Jonathan Grenard, ended up having 10-plus sacks with the Houston Texans last year. I'm kind of sad that he didn't end up staying in Houston, but it's an odd signing for the Vikings, I think.
Yeah, these wow. I guess I'm not realizing some of these edge numbers they're getting. That's a lot of money for Jonathan Grenard. I mean, like you said, over 10 sacks last season. He's been playing great over the last couple of years, really developed, and I was hoping the Texans would keep him as one of their kind of cornerstones, but wow, that's a lot of money to pay him. But Vikings, I guess, just building that D-line while they try to figure out what they're doing in this transitionary period, because they're in a weird spot right now.
If you want good edge rushers,
you gotta pay.
You gotta pay top dollar. I mean, that's just the reality of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what I don't know. I know you know, buddy. I don't know what Chase Young's market's going to end up being. Part of me kind of feels like he might just get a 1-year prove-it deal just because of all the issues he had with Washington. but we'll see. Um, and speaking of defensive linemen, Christian Wilkins, in kind of a surprise move, got a massive 4-year, $110 million deal to go to the Las Vegas Raiders, and he is now going to be paired up with Max Crosby on that defensive line. And dear God, someone pray for Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I absolutely love this from a D-line building standpoint. It kind of reminds me last year of when the 49ers added Javon Hargrave to that already super scary D-line. You're just adding more talent to that D-line. And we've seen with the Eagles and other teams, we're seeing it now with the Giants kind of too. You can never have too much talent on a D-line. Like, you keep
No.
adding as much as you can. It's always great to have two premium edge guys. Now you got that in Crosby and Wilkins. You can build up a little bit more on the interior. I love it. Yeah, you had to give him the bag, but let's keep it real. You don't have a QB you're really paying besides Gardner Minshew, who's more of a bridge guy. Just build up that D-line, keep the defense looking nice, and maybe, just maybe, you'll look into a QB and the franchise will turn around, but I love it from a D-line building standpoint.
Yeah, no, 100%. I do too. I think that sometimes it gets lost in the mix, but D lines are constantly in the trenches, so having fresh bodies in there constantly, it can't be overstated how ideal that is to building a Super Bowl winning roster.
It was the Eagles' way, and we see it more and more over the past 10 years. I mean, having even a rotation of guys, man. Like, you don't have to have a star guy, but just a quality rotation. Like, those backups, too, that come in maybe 25% of the snaps, having those guys fresh is huge.
Yeah, enough about your Eagles.
I gotta praise my Eagles somehow.
No. But this was only day one of the legal tampering period, and there are a ton of guys still available. Dale Hunter, Calvin Ridley, Daquan Jones, Patrick Queen, Darnell Mooney, Tyron Smith, Justin Simmons, Chase Young, Josh Reynolds, just to name a few. Like, Eric Henry is also available. So there is no shortage of guys left to sign, and I'm sure we will do another show tomorrow where we recap the day 2 guys that get signed. But and these are just some of the deals that we talked about today. There are so many other ones that got paid today. Just there's no time to really talk about them. So let us know down in the comments below what were some of your favorite signings today. Who's a free agent winner on day 1? Who's a free agent loser in day 1? It's the Giants. But let us know who your favorites were today. As always, you can find me on X at Jacob Kelly with a K USF. I am the long lost son of NBA Celtics legend James Young. These are my co-hosts, Chris and Tarique.
Yeah, thank you for tuning in. Like Jacob said, let us know your favorite free agency moves in the comments below. Hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoy this type of content and want to see more. It helps us out a ton. And as always, thank you for watching and have a good one.